there. So in this video, we're going to be doing extra practice module 74, which gets into the details about externalities. Module 74 and the Coase theorem and like how can we solve them and all that kind of stuff. So let's take a look at check your understanding number 1, part A. It says wastewater runoff from a poultry farm adversely affects residents' neighboring homes. That's the definition of a NIMBY, not in my backyard. Explain the following, why this is an externality. A, because poultry sales, right, negatively cost the uninvolved residents. So those residents are not involved in the buying and selling of the poultry, but yet they bear an extra cost, right, an external negative cost. That's why we call it that, negative externality. The efficiency of the outcome with neither government intervention nor private deal. It is inefficient because quantity in the market is greater than the quantity that's socially optimal. C, how the socially optimal outcome is determined and how it compares with the no intervention, no deal outcome. It's determined, Q opt is determined by finding like where the marginal social benefit and marginal social cost, which in this case, you know, the social benefit is the same as the private benefit, but it's by MSB equals MSC. And in this case, the marginal private benefit and the social benefit are the same thing, but this social cost curve is what we actually are not looking at. And so, you know, but then the second part of that question is just what I wrote already up there, that QM is bigger than Q opt and that there's deadweight loss. Let's take a look at number 2. According to Yasmin, any student who borrows a book from the university library fails to return it imposes a negative externality on other students. Okay, sure. She claims that rather than charging a modest fine, the library should therefore charge a huge fine so the borrowers never return a book late. Is her reasoning correct? She's wrong. Duh, Yasmin. No, because there's, and this is my reasoning, and I'm going to see if I can figure out a way to explain this. There's some social benefit in allowing people to return books late, right? You know, that would be like saying, you know, hey, their value may end up being, right, there is some extra cost, but there's some level of benefit that accrues to allowing people to return the book late. So we'd say some, you know, benefit from late returns. Late returns exists. And it's a private benefit in that sense, you know, that allowing me to return the book late, the quantity of books returned late, there's probably some socially optimal quantity, and there's probably like the market quantity of books that are returned late. And we would say that probably the socially optimal quantity is less than the market quantity, which would speak to the need for some level of like, of a fine, right? But not such a huge fine that we effectively ban the existence of late returns. That's kind of what her proposal is like never allow people to return the books late because it's so awful. There are certain things that are such a negative externality that's what the government does, right? We think about something like heroin. There is such an enormous external cost, a negative externality, that the government, rather than just taxing it and saying, hey, we're going to tax it and legalize it, they say the external cost is enormous, so we'll just ban it. Even though there's probably some socially optimal quantity of heroin out there, it's so small that the government, rather than dealing with all the ancillary issues of taxing it, they just say, we'll ban it. In this case, there's the external cost is not that enormous to returning a book late. So Yasmin, you know, lighten up, dude, or girl, gal, I don't know, she, so yeah, gendering Yasmin there. The socially optimal level of pollution, multiple choice questions. We get less making fun of Yasmin. The socially optimal level of pollution is whatever it's probably less than the market, but it's not zero. It's the same problem with the late return books, right? There's a socially optimal quantity of all these things. It's typically not zero. Even with heroin, there's probably some very small socially optimal quantity of consumption going on there. Although don't put me on the spot and ask how much, but it would be so small that in the case of something like heroin, we just ban it. With pollution, it's not zero. The socially optimal quantity is not zero. We often talk about that and we say, you know, should we just ban all carbon emitting devices? No, but we should take steps to remedy the fact that there's a negative externality. So we'll say B. What a great question. Students, and I'm going to say that definitely is going to show up on your quiz. It's a great question. Students often would say 0, but it's not 0, right? That socially optimal is small, but it's non-zero. Which of the following is a source of negative externalities? Loud conversations in a library. Yeah, that's it. Dressy but uncomfortable shoes. I like E, but it's wrong. A is the correct answer. It affects other people. It's not really a transaction, but whatever. Number 3, inefficiencies caused by externalities can be dealt with through government actions only. Not necessarily. You could use the Coase theorem. Private actions only, no. Market, no. Either private or government actions, D. You can deal with them both ways. You can use the Coase theorem to do the market stuff in certain circumstances. Coase theorem, here we are, asserts that under the right circumstances, inefficiencies can be dealt with through private bargaining, B. 5, what makes it more likely that those would succeed? There would be small number of people, D, there you go. All the others would make it harder. So. And now let's take a look at number 2, free response. And it says, define the Msc of pollution. Msc is the MPC of the polluter plus external cost to others. Okay, and then what's the social benefit? Well, marginal social benefit is the private benefit from people buying products that result in pollution. Products that result in pollution. So like when I drive my car to work every day, there's a private benefit. I emit carbon when I do that. I get private benefit though in getting from point A to point B. There's also a private cost in the people when I paid for basically the gasoline that goes into my vehicle, but then there's an external cost that accrues to society. And so that's the difference there. C is what's the socially optimal, the quantity of pollution where MSC equals MSB. And we could talk about there's other forms of pollution that the government has said the external benefit or the external cost is so huge that we just ban it. CFCs are a great example, right? Where chlorofluorohydrocarbons or something, I forget what it stands for. It used to be used basically to keep refrigerators running and air conditioning units. But the problem with them is that they destroy the ozone layer and it destroys planet Earth's atmosphere. And so we just ban it. And that's something that if they're incredibly dangerous, we'd say, the quantity is so small and the costs are so high that it's easier to do that than to tax it with a Pigouvian tax. But those are more of public policy choices. All right, hopefully this helped you. See you next time.